5 a.m. CEO Alexandra Pierce was walking to her car when she noticed a little girl huddled behind a lamppost in the parking lot, arms wrapped around a soaked backpack. She assumed the child was lost, but when she crouched down, the girl looked up and whispered, "Sir, my mom didn't come home last night." Alexandra froze. The child tried to swallow her tears. "Daddy can't walk today, and Mom always comes back. Always." A bitterly cold wind swept through. Alexandra was about to call building security when the girl stepped back, shaking her head. "No, Daddy said the woman in the navy coat would help." Alexandra looked down at what she was wearing. Navy blue coat. She followed the child into the blinding snow. Alexandra followed the little girl through the empty parking lot, the sound of falling snow creating heavy layers underfoot. Her heart pounded from the intuition that something serious had happened. She asked the child's name. The girl spoke softly. "I'm Lily Carter. My mom's name is Emily. My dad is Liam. His leg is hurt, so he can't go looking." Alexandra recognized they lived in the Northern Labor District, a place she'd only heard about in social reports. Never visited herself. The contrast was stark. Her penthouse overlooked the city from the 42nd floor. Their world existed in shadows she'd never explored. Walking through the pre-dawn darkness, Alexandra observed that Lily kept wiping away tears but tried to appear strong, as if afraid of worrying adults more. The child's resilience broke something inside her. 6 years old and already carrying burdens no child should carry, Alexandra felt strange. A powerful CEO getting involved in a poor family's crisis, something she'd never done before. Her entire life had been scheduled, controlled, focused on quarterly earnings and shareholder value. But here she was, following a child into the unknown. They arrived at an old apartment complex, stairs littered with trash, walls stained and peeling, paint cracked from decades of neglect. The smell of mildew and cooking oil hung in the air. Lily knocked on apartment 302 with small, careful knuckles. Liam Carter opened the door, leaning on crutches, his face full of worry. Then he froze, seeing the CEO standing at his doorstep. Recognition flickered in his eyes. He'd seen her face in company newsletters. Never imagined she'd be at his door. He quickly apologized for Lily running off into the snow. His voice trembled with embarrassment and fear. But Alexandra only asked, "Your wife didn't come home last night," her voice serious as if handling a board crisis. This wasn't small talk. This was an emergency, Liam explained. Emily worked the evening shift at a retail chain partnered with the corporation. She should have been home by 11. But at 1 a.m., still no sign of her. Phone calls went straight to voicemail. Text messages remained unread. He tried to search, but his leg pain flared up from a work accident 3 weeks ago. Still healing. Still unable to put full weight on it. Lily had insisted on running to find someone who could help. The woman in the navy coat, who was very kind to Mommy that time at the company. Alexandra remembered. Last week, she'd helped a female employee find her access card after it fell between elevator doors. Offered words of encouragement about her work. A brief interaction. 30 seconds, maybe less. She hadn't thought it would be remembered. Hadn't realized how much small kindnesses could matter. Liam showed Alexandra Emily's phone, left it home on the kitchen counter. Extremely unusual. Emily never went anywhere without it. She used it for directions, for checking on Lily, for coordinating with Liam's medical appointments. Alexandra immediately recognized the urgency. No phone, no notification, lost contact in a snowstorm. Every minute that passed made the situation more dangerous. Hypothermia could set in within hours in weather like this. She said, "We'll find her. I promise, Oriamt." For the first time in her life, that promise wasn't to shareholders or board members. It was to a trembling child whose world was falling apart. A promise that carried real weight, real consequence. Lily hugged Alexandra's arm, whispering, "Miss, you won't leave us, right?" Alexandra crouched down, placed her hand on the backpack Lily still clutched. Never. The apartment was tiny, maybe 400 square feet. A kitchen barely large enough for 2 people. A bathroom with a cracked mirror. One room that served as bedroom and living space combined, but it was clean, organized, loved. Photos on the walls. Lily's drawings taped to the refrigerator. A small plant struggling to grow on the windowsill. The life marker ending Act 1 came when Lily pulled from her backpack a bracelet her mother made from fabric cord. Worn and faded. Colors that had once been bright, now dulled by time and wear. Mom never goes anywhere without this. Lily's voice broke. She says it reminds her of Mom. Alexandra took the bracelet carefully, felt its weight, its significance, and understood with chilling clarity Emily hadn't left voluntarily. Something had happened, something bad. Before we continue, tell us where you are watching from. We'd love to know how far this story reaches. Alexandra used her internal connections to summon her night assistant, calling in favors to access security camera systems near the store where Emily worked. Protocol be damned. Policy be damned. A woman was missing. The cameras showed Emily leaving the store at 11:12 p.m., bundled in her thin jacket, backpack slung over one shoulder. Normal, unremarkable. Then the footage showed something that made Alexandra's blood run cold. A man in a dark coat followed her, keeping distance, staying in shadows. Deliberate, practiced. Lily burst into tears. That's not anyone we know. Alexandra recognized the man from security reports filed across multiple branches, a customer with a history of disruptive behavior, verbal threats to staff, escalating complaints that never quite justified police involvement but raised red flags internally. But there was more. Cross-referencing his visits with incident reports revealed a pattern. Employees who reported him often had their complaints buried, dismissed as overreactions. Liam stood up despite his leg pain, eyes red with worry and rage. He tried to grab his coat with shaking hands, but Alexandra stopped him gently. You need to save your strength. Let me handle this. Her voice was steel-wrapped in compassion. The building security guard, a man named Davidson, who'd worked there for 15 years, showed contempt when he saw Liam's poverty and limp. His lip actually curled in disgust. Ms. Pierce, he's exaggerating. These people always do. Looking for handouts? Alexandra turned back, looked directly at him with ice in her voice. If you say one more insulting word about this family, I'll fire you on the spot, and I'll make sure your termination appears on every background check for the rest of your career. The guard went silent, pale. Liam looked at Alexandra with surprise at her standing up for him. No one with power had ever defended him before. Not once in his entire life. Alexandra demanded they review cameras from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m., every angle, every frame. The result chilled everyone in the room. Emily was forced toward the parking lot of an industrial area 6 blocks from the store. The man's body language showed aggression. Emily showed fear. Lily covered her face crying, saying something that made the entire room go quiet. Mommy promised she'd never let me sleep alone. The child's voice was small, broken, a promise shattered by violence. The retention spike hit when Alexandra discovered a strange detail. Before Emily left the store, she'd tucked something into her coat pocket, looked around nervously, then walked out faster than usual. Not her normal careful pace. Something was wrong even before the man followed her. Liam remembered suddenly, his voice urgent. Emily's been secretly investigating. The shift manager's been stealing employee bonuses, skimming a little from each paycheck. Small enough that most people don't notice. But Emily noticed. She's good with numbers. Always has been. He continued, words tumbling out. She said she was gathering evidence. Said she'd report it to someone with enough power to protect workers. Someone who couldn't be bought off or intimidated. Alexandra's jaw tightened. Someone didn't want that secret exposed. The pieces were falling into place. A whistleblower, a criminal operation, a woman in danger because she tried to do the right thing. When Alexandra wanted to call the police, Lily grabbed her hand, panicking. No police! Last time they came too late. Mommy said so. The child's fear was real, deep, born from experience. Alexandra knelt down, promised, okay, but we have to find your mother now. Right now. She pulled out her phone, started making calls. To her assistant, to security contractors she trusted, to people who owed her favors. Everyone prepared to leave when the store manager arrived, summoned by the security team. A man named Roberts with expensive shoes and a cheap tie. He spoke with the casual cruelty of someone insulated from consequences. The corporation bears no responsibility for low-level employee matters. She's not even full-time, technically a contractor. Alexandra felt cold at the callousness of the very system she led, the bureaucratic language designed to avoid liability, to minimize human cost. She'd approved policies like this, signed off on risk management strategies that treated people as line items. The contrast was stark. Here she was, at the top of a corporate empire worth billions, and here was a family barely surviving, whose crisis her company was dismissing as not our problem. The gap between her world and theirs felt obscene. "I'm making this my problem," Alexandra said firmly, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had built an empire from nothing. "And if you value your career, you'll help me. Now." Robert sputtered. "But the protocols? I don't care about protocols. A woman is missing. A mother, an employee of a company I own. That makes her my responsibility." The ending of Act 2 came with Alexandra looking into the snow outside and saying, "If the company won't protect her, I will." She meant it, every word. This wasn't the PR, wasn't optics. This was personal. The corporate world operated on certain rules: hierarchy, process, liability management, quarterly reports, and risk assessment. But standing in this cramped apartment, looking at a father who couldn't walk and a daughter who couldn't stop crying, those rules seemed obscene, inhuman. This wasn't about corporate policy. This was about a human being in danger, a mother trying to protect other workers, a woman who'd shown courage while everyone else stayed silent. And for the first time in her career, Alexandra was choosing the person over the policy, the human over the profit, the right thing over the easy thing. Would you have taken the risk? Tell us in the comments below. Alexandra, Liam, and Lily went to the industrial area where cameras had last recorded Emily. Snow reached their ankles, making each step difficult. Wind so bitter that Lily had to be carried by Alexandra, the child's small body shaking despite the layers of clothing. The industrial district was abandoned. Warehouses closed for years, broken windows like empty eye sockets, graffiti covering walls. The kind of place where bad things happened and nobody heard the screams. They found drag marks in the snow, faint but visible if you knew what to look for. Alexandra used her phone flashlight to examine every meter of ground. Her expensive Italian leather shoes, designed for boardrooms and galas, were completely inappropriate for this. Her feet were soaking wet and freezing. Her designer coat, perfect for looking authoritative in meetings, did nothing against this cold. But she didn't care, didn't even notice. Emily was out here somewhere, and every minute mattered. Every second could be the difference between life and death. They discovered Emily's coat pocket torn off and discarded under a tree, half buried in snow. Inside was an envelope containing fraudulent invoices Emily had planned to report. Payroll records showing the theft. Names, dates, amounts, evidence of systematic wage theft affecting dozens of employees over months. Liam trembled, his voice barely a whisper. She was taken because of this. The reality of it hit him. His wife had tried to help people, and it had nearly cost her everything. Alexandra gripped the envelope tight, her mind racing. The fraudulent activity was under the direct management of the regional vice president, Marcus Thornton, a man she'd personally promoted 2 years ago based on impressive quarterly numbers that now seemed suspicious, too good to be true. The first twist hit her like a physical blow. The regional VP wasn't incompetent. He was complicit, possibly orchestrating the whole theft operation, and she, Alexandra Pierce, had enabled him, given him power, protected him with her trust. She'd just called him, warned him they were investigating, given him time to cover his tracks, possibly to harm Emily further. The realization made her sick. She'd played right into his hands. "We need to move faster," Alexandra said urgently, adrenaline sharpening her focus. They heard a crash from a nearby abandoned warehouse, metal hitting concrete. A muffled cry. Alexandra ran toward it, ahead even of security personnel. Her heels broke on the uneven ground. She kicked them off and kept running in stockings through ice and snow. Inside the warehouse, they found Emily, hands tied behind her back with zip ties, mouth gagged with duct tape. The man from the security footage was searching frantically, tearing through boxes and equipment, looking for the evidence envelope. Liam lunged forward on his crutches, moving faster than seemed possible for an injured man. Raw protective instinct overriding pain. Security raised their batons to stop the intruder, but Alexandra blocked them with her own body. "No one touches him! Stand down!" Her voice carried absolute authority, the kind that came from years of commanding boardrooms. The security team froze, confused but obedient. Alexandra shouted at the attacker, "Police are on the way!" Though she actually hadn't called them yet. A calculated bluff. A gamble. The man panicked, ran toward the back exit. Alexandra gave chase through the snow, her breath creating white clouds in the freezing air. Her legs burned, lungs screamed. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Outside, the regional vice president, Marcus Thornton, appeared with a group of private security guards. His expensive suit looked absurd in this setting, his confident smile even more so. He accused Emily of stealing company documents and industrial espionage. Alexandra stood between Emily and Liam, facing down the VP and his guards. One woman, one injured man, one terrified child, against a regional vice president with hired muscle and the weight of corporate power behind him. It was exactly the kind of situation where the powerful always won, where money and connections crushed truth and justice, where good people got destroyed for trying to do the right thing. Except this time, Alexandra had one advantage they didn't expect. The second twist came when Alexandra calmly pulled out her phone and held it up. "You're on camera," she said evenly. "I've been live streaming this entire confrontation through the company's internal network. Every employee across every branch is watching. Thousands of them." Marcus's confident expression cracked like ice. "You're bluffing. Check your own phone. Company portal. Main feed." Alexandra's voice was cold as the snow around them. Marcus pulled out his phone. His face went white as he saw the viewer count. 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 employees watching live. Comments flooding in, demanding his termination. Reporting other instances of theft and intimidation. Years of buried complaints suddenly surfacing. The floodgates had opened, and there was no closing them. "You didn't just touch my employee," Alexandra said, her voice deadly calm. "You touched her family. You threatened a child's mother. And you did it thinking corporate power would protect you." She stepped closer, and despite being a foot shorter than him, Marcus stepped back. "But corporate power is mine, not yours, and I'm using it to destroy you." Within minutes, employees from other branches started arriving, having seen the live stream, driving through the snow, coming to bear witness, to support Emily, to demand justice. Marcus was restrained by his own security team, who'd realized they were on the wrong side, that their careers would end if they protected him now. Emily was untied. Lily ran into her mother's arms, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. The freeze moment came when Emily looked at Alexandra and said, "You came for me. You actually came." Alexandra's eyes filled with tears. "Of course I came. You're one of mine, and I protect what's mine." The ending of Act 3 showed Liam embracing Emily while Alexandra stood watching the snow fall, feeling for the first time that she belonged to something warmer than power. Something real. Something human. Police arrived finally, called by employees watching the stream. Marcus was arrested on multiple charges: theft, assault, conspiracy, false imprisonment. The evidence in the envelope, combined with the live stream testimony, made denial impossible. As Marcus was led away in handcuffs, he spat at Alexandra. "You'll regret this." "Regret? The board will do what I tell them," Alexandra interrupted. "Because unlike you, I actually earned my position, and now I'm using it for something that matters." Emily was taken to the hospital for examination. Fortunately, only minor injuries from being restrained. Cuts on her wrists from the zip ties. Bruising, dehydration. but alive, safe. The doctor said she was lucky. A few more hours in that warehouse and hypothermia would have set in. Alexandra went outside to buy hot cocoa for Lily from the hospital vending machine. The image of a CEO in a designer coat, shoeless with torn stockings, standing at a vending machine made the entire hallway stare. Nurses whispered. Visitors took photos. She didn't care. Female employees from various branches sent messages thanking Alexandra for protecting Emily. A wave of genuine respect rippled through the company. Not the forced deference of hierarchy, but real admiration. Workers who'd been silent for years started speaking up about other abuses. When Alexandra returned to the hospital room with a hot cocoa, Lily ran over and hugged her legs. "You're my mommy's hero." Emily took Alexandra's hand, speaking through tears. "I never thought a CEO would come looking for someone like me. We're nobody to you." Alexandra knelt beside the hospital bed, her voice firm. "You're not nobody. You're someone who stood up when everyone else stayed silent. You're braver than most executives I know. And yes, I came looking, because that's what leaders are supposed to do." The corporate board sent an official message suggesting Alexandra stay silent about the incident to protect the company's reputation, handle it internally, minimize media exposure, control the narrative. Alexandra sent back one sentence. "Kindness doesn't need covering up, and neither does justice." Social media spread the story rapidly, not through company PR, but through employees sharing the live stream. The Snow White CEO, they called her, because of images of her carrying Lily through the blizzard, shoeless in the snow, fighting for a worker nobody else would protect. The story went viral, not as a corporate feel-good piece, but as something real. Raw, human. Comments flooded in from around the world. Other workers sharing their own stories of being dismissed, ignored, told they didn't matter. Liam looked at Alexandra with respectful eyes, knowing that without her, Emily wouldn't have been found in time. "I don't know how to thank you," he said quietly. "We have nothing to give." "You don't need to give anything," Alexandra replied. "Just keep being good parents. Keep teaching Lily that doing the right thing matters. That's more valuable than anything I've ever built." Alexandra also felt, for the first time, the warmth of a family, something she'd never had because of her own cold childhood. Boarding schools, absent parents, nannies who were paid to care but never really did. Emily invited Alexandra to dinner at their home to repay the favor. The invitation was sincere, hopeful. Alexandra was surprised because it was the first time anyone had invited her as family, not as a business contact or networking opportunity. During the meal, which was simple but made with love, Lily pulled Alexandra's hand closer. "Miss, our family owes you something we can never repay." Alexandra was genuinely moved, not the kind of emotion used in speeches to manipulate shareholders, but the emotion of a human being connecting with other human beings. Real, unscripted, true. The dinner was in the tiny apartment. Pasta with homemade sauce, garlic bread from the discount bakery, a salad made from whatever vegetables they could afford. 4 people crowded around a table meant for 2, and it was perfect, the best meal Alexandra had eaten in years. Because it wasn't about the food, it wasn't about ambiance or presentation, it was about being wanted, being welcomed, being seen as more than a title or a bank account. "I grew up alone," Alexandra found herself saying. "My parents were always working. I learned early that emotions were inconvenient, that caring made you vulnerable, that success meant sacrificing connection." "And now?" Emily asked gently. "Now I think I was taught wrong." Lily climbed into Alexandra's lap, something no child had ever done before. The little girl was warm and real and trusting. Alexandra held her carefully, as if she might break, as if this moment might disappear. The ending of Act 4 showed Alexandra looking at the small family before her and smiling genuinely. "Today, I finally learned what it means to be welcomed home. I never thought I'd walk through a blizzard looking for a stranger. But Lily's eyes that day made me understand there are cries for help you can't ignore. I'm a CEO. My whole life I was taught to maintain distance, to be strong, to be cold. to separate business from emotion, to maximize shareholder value above all else. But that night, a child pulled me out of the tower I'd built for myself, made me see what I'd been missing, what I'd sacrificed in pursuit of success. Watching Liam struggle to walk despite his pain, I saw an image of my own father, a man who also tried to his limits for his family, who worked himself to death trying to provide. And I'd never understood him, never appreciated his sacrifice. When we found Emily tied up in that warehouse, I knew one thing for certain. I wanted to use my power for its true purpose. Protection, not protecting quarterly earnings, not protecting stock prices or market share or competitive advantage. Protecting people, real people with real lives and real families. Today, watching Lily run around that small kitchen, I understand why I feel so peaceful, why this tiny apartment feels more like home than my penthouse ever did. I lived too long in cold conference rooms, forgetting that the warmest place is a home with laughter, with people who care about each other more than they care about profit margins. The Carter family taught me that. They saved me from a life of only work and silence, from becoming the kind of person who has everything and feels nothing. If someone asks me what the biggest lesson from this journey is, I'll say this. Real strength isn't in the position you stand. It's in how you stand beside others when they need you, when it costs you something, when it's inconvenient or risky or against policy. The corporate reforms came swiftly after that night. Anonymous reporting systems, wage audits, protection for whistleblowers, an ethics committee with real authority and independence. But more than that, I changed. I started eating lunch in the employee cafeteria instead of my private dining room. I learned names, asked about families, listened to concerns without checking my watch. Some board members said I was getting too close to staff, making myself too accessible, damaging the hierarchy that made the company function. I told them that was exactly the point, that hierarchy without humanity was just tyranny with a corporate logo. The Carter family still invites me to dinner every Sunday. I never miss it. It's the highlight of my week, more important than any board meeting or investor call or industry conference. Lily draws me pictures that I frame and hang in my office, right next to my Harvard MBA and my Forbes 30 Under 30 plaque. Because both matter. Both are part of who I am, the woman who built an empire, and the woman who learned that empires mean nothing if they crush the people who build them. I'm still a CEO, still make hard decisions, still drive the company forward, still accountable to shareholders and markets and regulators. But now I do it remembering a little girl in the snow whispering, "My mom didn't come home," and the promise I made, never again, not on my watch. Because protecting people isn't a distraction from business. It is the business, the only business that actually matters. True power isn't standing above others. It's standing beside them when they need you most. Success isn't what you build for yourself. It's who you protect along the way. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe to Strong Dad Stories. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten.